Thanks very much, Shuki. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have as Shuki said, we have some outstanding speakers, and you're going to see right now that that statement is definitely true. So I want to introduce this morning's keynote speaker. Recognized for the past decade as one of the world's leading experts on customer-based strategies and growing customer value, this speaker is an acclaimed author, world-class speaker, and founding partner of Peppers & Rogers Group, the world's leading customer-focused management consulting firm. Most recently, she co-authored Extreme Trust, a best-selling book that focuses on honesty and transparency as a competitive advantage. And by the way, a copy of the book, if you don't already know, is in your Synergy bag. Please welcome to the Synergy stage, Dr. Martha Rogers.
I'm so happy to be here in Dallas. I just want to thank Retalix for making it possible to be here. So thank you to Greg and Oren and Todd and Shuki and Ruthie and all of you for taking some time this morning to think about some of the research that we've been doing over the last few years that we think profoundly affects the future of retailing. So when we think about this stuff, you know, we're really thinking about how suddenly imperative this idea of trust really is. It's always been important, of course, but suddenly it's more imperative than it's ever been. Let's talk about why. You know, it was back in 1996 that the head people at Barnes & Noble corralled Jeff Bezos. He's the guy who founded Amazon.com, and he was still in the middle of his 28 quarters where he lost money. And so the Barnes & Noble people wanted to do him a favor. So they sat him down and they said, Jeff, we want to buy you because we're about to launch barnesandnoble.com, and since we have a better known logo and brand than you do, we're going to eat you alive. So as a sort of present to you, we want to buy you. And he said, with all respect, no. Let's see how that turned out for everybody. Let's see. Today, Barnes & Noble, nice bookstore, has a market cap of $735 million. That's a pretty good business. Let's see how Jeff is doing with Amazon.com. That's right, he now has a market cap of $117 billion, and that is the difference between a retailer that's a very good retailer, Barnes & Noble, that is very product-oriented, and a very good retailer who is, Amazon.com, customer-oriented. Barnes & Noble has figured out how to have gorgeous stores and set up the products and then try to find customers for those products, and that's worth about $735 million in market cap. But Jeff Bezos has figured out how to find customers, one after the other, one at a time, cater to each one, and then has made sure that he finds products and more products for those customers. How many of you have ever bought anything from Amazon.com that is not in the book, Kindle, or DVD family? Anybody with me? I recently bought a refrigerator from Amazon.com, and Amazon had it installed for me in my Upper West Side New York apartment. So that's how I think of Amazon. So that's the difference between product focus and customer focus. Now, product focus made a lot of sense way back in the 1900s. By the way, that phrase is not mine. I have a niece named Molly. She's 16. And Molly is very cool. Now, I have terrific sons, but I forgot to have daughters. And so it's really great to have my nieces because they keep me straight on some things. So Molly's talking to me and she says, oh, Aunt Martha, you know, way back in the 1900s. And I got it right away. You know, so when we think about those old days, then it made sense to be product oriented. You had a product you wanted to sell, or a service, or a series of services, or you know, whatever it was, and then you tried to find customers for that product, sell it to as many people as you can. It doesn't matter who it is. And the goal then was to try to get as much market share as you could. But now the focus is different because of the technologies, because we can focus on the people who are actually paying us money. Then instead of focusing on one product at a time and trying to find customers for the product, then like Amazon, we focus on one customer at a time and then try to find products for that customer over time. And we do that over and over and over and over with each one of our customers. Why? Because those customers that we have and the customers that we have in the future, they're the ones who will determine what the limit is to the size of our business, to the growth of our business. Products, they're unlimited. Channels, they're unlimited. But customers, they're still finite. So that means instead of just focusing on how to maximize the value that's created by every product or every department or every piece of our business, that we have to think in terms of maximizing the value that's created by every single customer. Not, are we making more in the dairy area this month than we did last month? But rather, is Mrs. McGillicuddy giving us all her business? Is she giving us part of her business? Is she shopping here more or less than she used to? Why? That's what interests us more. There's a way of doing business in Japan called Toyama no Kosuri Uri. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And one of the businesses that practices this actually sets up a little medicine cabinet in people's homes. And then they come around every so often and they stock it with the basic stuff that everybody needs from the drugstore. And then they come around, you know, occasionally, and they replace what you've used, and then they charge you for that. And so basically it works like a hotel minibar, only in your home with stuff from the drugstore. So they keep their records in a written record, which they call a daifukucho. And this written record actually keeps track of what's in different households. So if it turns out that you use more of the stomach ailment remedies, then they will start giving you a bigger choice in that and maybe cut down on some of the choices in some of the other categories. So it's very tailored to the customer. It helps the customer a lot, and it helps the business as well. Now, what's remarkable about this business is not just that they do a great job with remembering what customers want and tailoring it for them. That seems normal to us these days. What's remarkable about this business is that they've been around since 1750. They've been around for, over 250 years. They have been in the houses of some families straight through without a break for these 2.5 centuries. They're deeply trusted. I want you to think for a moment about how much the products inside the cabinets have changed. It's the customers that have remained the same. That's what's at the heart of this business. And they can't build it for generation after generation after generation without people really trusting them. Now, trust is really everything. In fact, our prediction is that trustability will become the single most enduring measurement of a company's ability to create and sustain value. We did a study on this and in fact discovered that across all industries that 84% of marketing leaders agree that building customer trust is going to become marketing's primary objective over the next 10 years. Now, that is really a huge challenge given the world that we're living in these days and the opinion that customers have of us. Because customers can be very tough, but there are 3 things that they respond to. If we figure out what's best for each one of them, and then we do it and do it well, and we do it and do it well proactively. They don't have to work so hard so that we can make some money. We do some of the work for them. It's radical. So how do we make sure that we do that? Well, we are thinking all the time about maximizing the value that's created by every single customer. Why? For these 3 simple reasons. Because customers create all the value for our company. Yes, we have fabulous stores. Yes, we have omni-channels. Yes, we have wonderful products. Yes, we have more of a variety of products than anyone ever imagined. When I think about the fact that I was able to eat raspberries this morning for breakfast, what a radical thought. I mean, the things that you folks provide and make available to your customers anywhere in the country, indeed anywhere in the world, is really remarkable, but there's not a product on this earth that pays us money. Brands don't pay us money. Sales regions don't pay us money. Stores don't pay, employees don't pay us money. Only customers do. Those customers that we have right now and the ones that we're going to have in the future, and that's why we're in business. Now, when customers create that value for our business, they create value right now. They create it today, they create it this quarter. We're really good at measuring that. We've learned how to do that really well. We know that we spend this much money to try to create sales, that's cost of goods sold, and we know that we also get a lot of money in, and the difference between those is either the profit or the loss. And we've been really good at measuring that for a long time, but the fact is that today, customers don't just create that current value. They also create a long-term value. Today, they become more or less likely to do more business with us in the future, to give us some of the business they've been giving somebody else, to tell their friends how great we are or not. Those decisions are also made today, and they will affect the success of our business. So understanding that customers have not only short-term value for us, but also today have a measurable long-term value. And then understanding that customers are finite in number. Yes, I've heard there's 7 billion people on the planet. But for any one of us, no matter how far the reach of our chain or our group, there are still only so many customers who are willing to come to us, to shop with us, to buy things from us, to do business with us. And the limit of those number of people determines how much we can ever grow. You know why? Because you can always manufacture more products. You can figure out a way to stock more of them. You can put more at the end of the aisle. You can put more in the middle of the aisle. But you cannot manufacture more customers. They either exist today or they don't. They'll come of age tomorrow or they won't. But the fact is that we can't make more of them. We can clone sheep, but we can't clone more customers. And so understanding that they are the finite resource for us gives us a way of thinking about what we do for them. It gives us a different point of view. We did some work with a company in Australia named Orica. And in this company, Orica makes explosives for a living. They promise they never sell to terrorists. They only sell to people who are blasting rock out of the ground. And so it used to be that they thought of themselves as being in the name of product business, in the explosives business. And so they acted accordingly. They would go to a mining company and they would say, here's a proposal. You give us some money, we will give you back some explosives. Good luck, don't hurt yourself. But then they realized that that wasn't really that helpful to their customers. Because their customers, in order to do the kind of business that would make it possible for the customer to help Orica make any money, had to actually do a bunch of stuff. They had to find some rock somewhere. Then they had to make a real estate deal. Then they had to work out some kind of environmental protection arrangement with the government where the land was. Then they had to start hiring people. Then they had to build a little building. They had to hire accountants. Then they had to start getting equipment in. They had to start trying to get some mining done. They probably have to get some explosives to get some of that rock out of the ground. Then they got to hire salespeople. The salespeople have to go sell this rock and this granite and this marble and stuff. And then they got to ship it out. You got to put it in trucks, and you got to put it on ships, and you got to do other things. Did you hear the word explosives in that description? It was there, but it was a tiny little part of what they do. And so, that sort of gave Orica a different way of looking at the business that they're in. And they went back and they said, okay, all right. Instead of you give us some money, we'll give you some explosives. We know what you want. You give us some money, we will give you back broken rock of a certain size, because that's what you're after. We'll take that off your hands. And then, by the way, we do this stuff all over the world, so we're pretty good at this environmental protection form filling out too. So let us take that part off your hands as well. Wow, now there's a partnership between Orica and their customers. And they're not just thinking in terms of who can they get the cheapest explosives from. They're thinking of who can help me the most. Spar, based in Germany and Austria, that was the first grocery wholesaler that was able to say, gosh, we just can't lower the price of our groceries anymore to the retailing folks. And so what we're able to do now is we're going to figure out how to expand the definition of what we sell. So they're the first ones that went and did that mapping inside a store so that we know where the tea bags are, we know where the grocery, where the cereal boxes are, we know where everything else is. And so when we unload it, when we put things back on your loading dock, we actually put it in the order that the stuff's in your store in. So you can unload it right in order. It's very efficient. And now, instead of selling you, bananas for a certain price, we sell you bananas on the shelf for a certain price. It's a different product. And that requires us to work together. That requires a partnership, an investment on the part of the customer that pays off when the provider actually does a great job for that. So we have to ask ourselves all the time, what business are we really in? What business are we in at the B2B level? What business are we really in at the B2C level? What are we really selling? What are customers really buying? Because that's what really matters. Think about what that value proposition really is with a customer. We're actually creating value to the customer in order to create value from the customer. So for a customer to do that, they become engaged in a relationship. And when that happens, when does the customer value that the most? The answer is very simple. When the customer can trust us to do what's best for us. Not just sell us something we don't need, not just, but to really look out for our interests. I mean, everyone in this room, you have somebody you do business with that you just don't question what they would do for you. You trust them to do it right. For me, it's an insurance agent. For you, it might be somebody else. But I know I don't have to shop around. I know that I'm going to get the best answer. I'm going to get the right answer. I know I can trust her. So relationships are very different to both the customer and the store, the vendor, the wholesaler, than just each individual isolated transaction. Now we're thinking about the value of the whole customer over time. And so we solve problems differently, and we think of them that differently. And in the long run, these relationships that are built on trust are really how we take care of individual customers the best. So if customers trust you, then they believe that you're going to understand their point of view. They're not going to go around saying, why are they making it so hard? Have you ever done that as a consumer? You feel like it shouldn't be this hard to spend this money here? And every time that happens, your competitor has an opportunity. So here's a question that you have to ask yourself every day. What's it like to be our customer? What's it like to be our customer when she's on the cell phone, when she's on her smartphone? What's it like to be our customer when she's on her iPad, her computer? What's it like once she gets into the store? What's it like when she's standing in line? What's it like when she's looking for a product? What's it like for our consumers? What's it like if we're B2B? What's it like for the people who are trying to make a living and they're in the trenches at the front lines with their retail operations, and how can we help them make that work better, and what should it be like for those people? And how can we make that better all the time? There are three elements of this idea of trustability: goodwill, competence, and proactivity. Now, those are important. And this idea that customers look to us, if we have a trusting relationship, then they know we're taking care of them. USAA Insurance, they're based in San Antonio, Texas. Is anybody here a member? They actually serve people throughout the United States. So if you're from outside the U.S., I'm sure you don't know them, but I'll tell you very quickly. They are an insurance company. They sell all kinds of insurance. And at some point, they decided, we could help our members, they don't call them customers, our members by also taking care of their banking needs. So they do banking. And by the way, all the banks quelled, they were scared when USAA announced that, because they knew that USAA customers would immediately switch over and from whatever bank they were using and become USAA banking customers too, and they did. How many of you do we have any USAA customers here? Yeah, so sir, you're over there. We haven't talked before, right? I have nothing up my sleeve. Okay, straight. So, what generation are you, first of all? Your parents, grandparents? So you're first, second, or third? Third. So you're third generation. So that's how it works. It's for military personnel in the U.S., but your children, whether they're military or not, can also be a member. So it goes down through families. So you're a third. And do you trust them completely? Absolutely. You don't even try to shop somewhere else. So, by the way, every single year, Forrester does a survey, and it determines who the most trustable financial services institution in the United States is. And guess what? Every year, it's USAA Insurance, way out ahead of everybody else. And Forrester says, well, that if you're really a customer advocate like that you're going to be considered for additional products much more so than if you're not. But you know, that kind of empathy, that kind of reciprocity, it doesn't just work one way. Let me tell you how this works. The customers of this kind of company love the company so much, they want to see the company do well. So here's a perfect example, just one of the examples from USAA. Way back in the first Persian Gulf War in 1991, that was 6 weeks long. Military from the US went over to the Persian area, to the Middle East, and they fought the war for 6 weeks, and then they came home. Shortly after they got back, the folks at USAA sent little refund checks for that 6-week period saying, gosh, while you were fighting for our country, thank you very much. We know that you shouldn't have been having to pay for your car insurance because the car was sitting in the garage and not at risk. So here's a little refund for that time. Now, that shows trust. That takes care of them. Guess what happened? This is the most amazing part of the story. Over 2,500 of the members mailed those refund checks back. In some cases, they actually said, well, you know, my spouse was using the car, so I really don't deserve the refund, but thank you very much for thinking of it. But in many cases, what they said was, USAA, we count on you so much. Keep the money, stay strong. We want you there the next time we need you. I'm just trying to picture myself sending a refund check back to Chase. I don't know, I just don't really see that happening. It works both ways. So here's the question. How would you compete against a company that customers trust so much that they send back the refunds and they stay for 3 generations and counting? Do your parents care what grocery store you use? Do your grandparents care? But, you know, okay, but you're not worried because after all, USAA is in the insurance business and they're not the grocery business, right? Well, okay, well, what if USAA partners with your competitor to offer groceries or convenience services to USAA's customers? And that's what we may be up against, something like that. How do we compete against those folks? See, we know that there are really 2 benefits of relationships. These relationships, these good experiences, they're built on trust, but we know that if we've got them, that we have happier customers. These are customers who get what they want, they don't get a bunch of stuff they don't want, it's very convenient, everything's very tailored for them. That's great, but we also know that we get lower costs because we don't have to do everything the same way for everybody, so we don't just increase the cost of customer service across the board. We can actually lower our inventory cost if we know what's what. And we can use our resources better, so it makes more sense. But the fact is that these days, customers don't trust companies. Why? Because some companies have inherently untrustable business models. You know, they just can't quite be trustable. They can't bring themselves to change from the way it was done back in the 1900s. And some companies mean well, and they try to do right, but they can't be counted on to get it right. They ask a customer, here's a perfect example. You've got a problem. Now you're already annoyed. You have to look up a number. You call somebody, and the first thing you're asked to do is give your 42-digit account number, right? So you feed that into the phone, then you wait while you're listening to somebody else's choice of hold music. And then finally you get a human being, and what's the first question you get asked? What is your account number? It's that sort of stuff. And asking for information that you already have, sending the same offer to a customer again and again, and she's probably already said no. Or how about giving employees not enough information to do the job right, and the list goes on and on. We've got to not only mean to do the right thing, we've got to get it right. And the fact is today that hardly anybody takes the initiative to do what's right for customers. We have a friend who lives in Chicago, and her daughter moved to Chicago, an adult. And so she's moving from one apartment, adult daughter, is moving from one apartment to another. So she hires budget rental in Chicago. And so she loads up her truck with a couple of friends, and she gets across town, and then she comes back to her apartment and loads it up the second time. And she's going back across town, and she realizes, oh my gosh, I'm getting caught in afternoon traffic. What am I going to do? Because if I don't get this truck back by 5:30, I've got to pay for another whole day. And she doesn't want to do that, obviously. So she's trying to get through traffic, and she's all worried about whether this is going to work. And the phone rings about 4:30. And it's the rental company, and they say, "How you doing?" She says, "Well, I'm doing pretty well, but they said, relax, drive safely. You know, we don't need the truck back until 6:30. You think you can do it by then?" "Oh, wow," she says, "that's really great." Now, she gets it back, everything's great. Now, they could maybe have stiffed her for an extra day of fee, but instead, they did the right thing. They did it proactively. And think about this. Do you think she will ever use another company? Do you think any of her friends will ever use another company? I'm telling you about it. If you're ever in Chicago, for heaven's sake, use budget rental if you want to do anything. So that's the way to go if you understand that customers create value for us in both the short term and the long term simultaneously. So going forward, there are going to be 3 requirements for extreme trust. Competence, that means do things right. Intention, that means do the right thing and do them both proactively. And that means that we sometimes will have to balance making another day's fee from making sure that we make this customer as valuable as possible over time. Now, if that sounds impossible, ask yourself what happens when our competitors start going out of their way to really make a difference in terms of being as trustable as possible. Now, set aside this idea of trustability for a second, and let's ask ourselves, why is this suddenly more important than it's ever been? And the answer lies with the Science Channel. I told you I raised boys, right? So we spent a lot of time looking at the Science Channel. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're a food source for bees. That means you are a flower. That's exactly right. So if you are a beautiful color and you have a great smell, then any bee is going to come within about a 2.5 kilometer or 2-mile radius to look and see how great you are. But when he gets back to the hive, he is only going to do that funny little waggle dance that they do on the Science Channel. Don't look at me, I'm not going to do it. But they're only going to do that if the nectar was really great. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because in a world in which customers didn't all talk to each other all the time about everything, then advertising and branding was all that mattered. But today, when customers all talk to each other about everything all the time, why, then it's the customer experience that counts. And that's what we have to spend our time and energy on and make sure is right. Otherwise, don't even worry about the branding. Why? Because in the age of transparency, where everything is exposed all the time, 83% of consumers trust the recommendation of their friends. More than half trust the online opinions of complete strangers. Many will not buy anything, even in stores, until they check out online referrals and ratings first. And only 14% of consumers trust advertising at all. It's what really happens to them that matters to them. You remember Moore's Law. Moore's Law is that every 20 years, the computers get 1,000 times cheaper and faster. That's fine. Well, it's led us to Zuckerberg's Law, named after Mark Zuckerberg, who founded Facebook. And he says, and I agree, that every 20 years we share 1,000 times as much information with others. We will always be more interconnected and never less. And as long as that's the case, then you and I will have everything that we do exposed. We will also find that there are some consumers and other customers, B2B customers, who have profound influence for no apparent reason, but we have to know that their experiences really matter. So Wall Street Journal examined 25,000 user posts on 6 of those sharing websites. 13% of Netscape's most popular postings, they found out, were done by a single user. Wow, that's very influential. Or how about this? There are 900,000 registered users on dig.com, but a third of the homepage postings came from just 30 users. But how about this one? Reddit's most widely read user, reddit.com, is Adam Feuer, or was during their study. He has millions of page views. Millions of people click to see what he has to say. He makes all kinds of recommendations on Microsoft products. Do we adopt the new version 8 of Apple products? He is very influential about what people buy. So the Wall Street Journal researchers said, who is this guy? And they go try to find out who he is, and guess who he is? And it turns out that Adam Feuer is 12 years old. He attends an elementary school in Toronto. Hello? It's just, this is nuts, but it's real. So when we think about transparency, it increases the cost of hiding the truth. Try to imagine how your business will run if every single email, every single note, every single everything is going to be out there for public consumption, because it could be. And there are no closed-door meetings anymore except behind closed doors that are made out of glass, and there's a lip reader on the other side. So what we say in our book is that transparency is like a disinfectant for business. It's going to purify things and help start the healing, but it's going to sting like hell, because we're going to have to get it right. We're going to have to get it right for the right reasons. Here's the point. If we make a mistake, any kind of mistake, then the news is going to be instant, it's going to be everywhere, and it's going to be there forever and ever and ever. There are not enough lawyers on this planet to get something taken back off the internet. Once it's there, it's there. Or as Linda Kaplan-Thaler says, you can't un-Google yourself. Or as one of the bloggers said on our website, I'm just reporting this, folks, but I thought it was a great way to put it. He said, you can't take something bad off the internet. That's like trying to take pee out of a swimming pool. I didn't write it, I'm just reporting it. But you know, he's right. So it's really the democratization of the customer experience. And for that matter, the customer communication. And for that matter, the power of customers to band together on Facebook and threaten, as they did with HSBC, to go on strike, take all their business to a different bank unless their free overdraft protection was restored on the checking accounts, and that's exactly what happened. It's power. It's real power in the hands of customers in a way that we never imagined before. And I'll tell you something, honeybees, they dance about everything. If it's been a little dry for you lately, gentlemen, you might just want to check out this website. Might be my new favorite, don'tdatehimgirl.com. Just so you know that it could be kind of interesting out there. But here's the question. A lot of people are asking, how can I use social media to sell more to my customers? That's the wrong question. The right question to ask is, how can I use any tool? How can I use the best new tools that we have? How can I use old-fashioned stuff? How can I use what this customer wants to use to build this customer's relationship with me, to understand this customer better, to do more for her than anybody else can do, and to build a more trustable relationship so that she knows that I'm doing things right, that I'm doing the right thing for her, and that I'm going to have her back. I'm going to do it proactively. I'm going to remind her about things. Remember, the simple truth is we have to do things right, do the right thing, do it proactively. And if you're saying to yourself, well, all this is fine, but you know, we're a great company. I mean, I understand that there are a lot of companies out there that are not very trustworthy these days, and so yay for Martha and Don. I'm glad they wrote this book and that they're going to clean up the rest of the world, but we're fine, really. You know, we've concentrated for a long time on being trustworthy, right? And what I want to try to do now is think about what the difference is between being trustworthy in the old sense of way back in the 1900s, and what it's going to take to be truly trustable from now going forward. Let's take a quick test on that. A trustworthy company carefully follows the rules of law, trains people on ethics policy, and really ensures compliance. And if you're doing that, give yourself a pat on the shoulder, because that is, you know, a step ahead of many companies. It's good stuff, but it's not yet trustable. A trustable company actually follows the golden rule, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which, by the way, doesn't just come in Christianity, it comes in every single religion that we could find, except the Mayans who ate people. But otherwise, you know, this idea of following the golden rule and building a corporate culture around that ability to do things that are fair. That's all, just do things that are fair. A trustworthy company does what's best for the customer whenever that's possible, balanced against the company's needs. And if you do that, yay, good for you. But a truly trustable company designs the business to ensure what's best for the customer is financially better for the firm. You and I both know of companies where that is not the case, where they actually are trying to figure out how to sort of take us a little bit, or how to make it better for them, but not necessarily also for us, or that sort of thing. We have to make sure that we design a whole business model that makes it better for customers, and when it's better for customers, it's also better for us. A trustworthy company manages and coordinates all the brand messaging and therefore ensures a compelling and consistent story. Good idea. That's great. We get a good blue ribbon if we do this. That's a great thing to do. But a truly trustable company recognizes that what people say about us is always going to be more important than what we say about ourselves. And so we not only change what we say to be great, we change what we do to be great so that people will say great things about us. And when we do that, by the way, I just want to take a moment to warn us off of something that we're seeing in our work that a lot of companies are moving toward. Gee, if people will just come to our website and give us great ratings and good comments, if only people would do this, we want to reward them for that. And our first feeling is, well, let's give them a discount, let's give them coupons, let's give them something else, some other kind of financial reward. But the fact is that this is the sharing economy. So we can't offer, money or free products or anything of economic value. If you do, then you want it to be something like this. Did you hear on the news this morning about the lady who was behind the needy family in line? And the family came up, they had $160 worth of groceries, and then their credit card was declined, and they all looked at each other, and the lady behind them in line said, here, let me just put that on my tab. And just quietly, no big deal. So if you want to reward somebody in a monetary way, you let them help somebody else, maybe. But the point is, we don't mix the sharing economy, which is something that 80% of humans want to do. 80% of human beings want to share with others. They want to share opinions to warn people away from bad stuff, to help them find good stuff. And the other 20%, you know who they are, and they're kind of weird. But 80% of us want to help. And so, instead of offering them monetary stuff that sort of taints the whole thing, well, I'll give you something and you can say something nice about me. Instead, you want to acknowledge them. Post a comment on their blog, or recognize them. Forward a key blogger's link, or give them, retweet them. That's what they love, right? Or give them information, useful data and insight and things that maybe everybody else doesn't know yet. Maybe you give them something in advance. I got to tell you something. I use a suitcase at least 200 days a year, and no luggage company has ever found me and said, Martha, you spent a lot of your time zipping and unzipping and rolling. My gosh, my luggage has more miles on it than my frequent flyer programs, right? So it's really, and yet none of them have ever said, Martha, you probably have an opinion about how that could be better. And I would just love it if they would come. I'd be happy to work for them for free and say, yes, as a matter of fact, if you would do this and this and this, it would make it a lot easier for me to live out of this luggage. But they don't do that. So just letting them actually have access is going to be an important part of what we do. And figuring out how we can let them influence us. So that's how we do it. A trustworthy company uses loyalty program, churn reduction, win-back initiatives to keep customers longer. Good idea. We need to do that. Yay for us. But remember that a truly trustable company seeks to ensure that customers want to remain loyal because they trust the company to act in their own best interest. They want to be here. And that's our challenge every single day. And finally, a trustable company focuses on this quarter's profits as the most important, comprehensive, and measurable key performance indicator. Great idea. We've all done that. We've done it since way back in the 1900s. We learned it in business school. Yeah, that's really fine and everything, but a trustable company is going to understand that we will balance our current level of profit with the long-term value of customer equity that we are creating and now can measure. So when we look at a company like USAA, they're a public company. They have to make profit every quarter, and they do. But in no quarter is it their goal to make the most, absolutely the most profit they can this quarter. Instead, they want to make a good profit this quarter, and also this quarter create long-term customer equity, trust, and value for those customers and from those customers, and balance the two. So when we think about doing business in the age of transparency, we're going to be dealing more and more with this supernova of data. We're going to need really great help with that. That's why we're here at this Retalix convention, right? So we're going to be looking at the supernova of data over and over, and it means that we have to be careful ourselves when we get all this data to use it wisely and not just let it sort of influence us or reinforce us for the stuff we already made our decisions on, but really be open to the real thing. I'll tell you something. We tell a story in our book about this guy who won the Spanish lottery, and he was real proud of himself because he chose his number, his winning number, because it ended in the number 48. And the reason he chose 48, it said, is because for 7 nights in a row, he dreamed about the number 7. And 7 times 7 is 48. Okay, so let's be careful out there when we're using our data. We also have to be careful that we avoid death by tweet, because we have to recognize there's an inherent unpredictability about this flood of information that customers can all give each other, and they can pile on, and they can do stuff. They have cascades of opinion. And so we can't control that. Just forget it. We can't control it. It's a conversation. It's not a channel. We're not in charge of that. But we can participate in it. We don't ever do sock puppeting, which is where we pretend to be maybe a customer, or we pretend to be somebody we're not. We're always honest about who we are, but we might be able to answer things and sort of cut things off at the beginning and make things work. But we also forgive other people's mistakes, and we also ask for forgiveness. And here's a little tip. This applies in our personal lives as well as professional. If you make an apology, just apologize. Don't make an excuse. Not, well, but you have to understand it wasn't really our fault because. Instead, it's, we're sorry. We made a mistake. Won't happen again. Here's what we're doing to make sure it won't happen again. Here's what we're doing to make it good for you. That's an apology. That's how it works. And the most important thing is that we have to build our extreme trust in advance. We have to do it because we're doing it day after day after day, so that if things go wrong, we're able to recover from it in a way that makes sense. What would a trustable gift card company look like? Wouldn't it be great for you if you bought a gift card for somebody and when you gave it to them, you knew that you could trust the gift card people, a month before it expired, to send an email to the person you sent the gift to that said, hey, you've got 30 more days. Please come in and use your gift card. What a radical idea. Or what would a trustable mobile operator look like? Wouldn't it be great if you got something that said, Sam, you know what? You're sending way more texts than you thought you would, but you're not using all your voice minutes. So tell you what, we're gonna suggest putting you on this different program. It'll save you a few dollars every month, and that'll be great for you. And if that happens, then of course it would cost the phone company a little bit of money, but what our research is showing us is that customers love it so much, they would be willing to pay $11 more per month to be with a cell phone company they actually trust. You can put that in the bank. It has real value, this idea of trust. Somebody who's looking out for my back and proactively tries to make it okay. I can't know whether I'm on the best cell phone plan. The only entity on earth that can do that is the company I do business with. If they don't, where are we? What would a trustable grocery store look like? What kinds of things would they do for me? Could they remind me of stuff I'm probably walking out and forgetting that I'm going to be sorry I don't have when I get home? Could they help me give a kids party or maybe a football reception or something like that and help me get that all figured out? Some of you are doing things like that. Could they make sure that I got to tell you something, I use all those. Everything that's available to me, I use it. There was not too long ago, I was in South Africa, and I hooked up my phone to my delivery service, my grocery delivery service in New York, and you probably know the name of them. In fact, we might have people hear from them. And I was actually able to place my grocery order to be delivered that night in New York. Because remember, we've got about an 8-hour time difference, right? So it's the next day for New York. So I got the delivery, and I got home, and 6 hours later, the delivery service came, and I had everything, and I was all shopped. So I ordered my groceries from my cell phone from South Africa, and I was much happier that way. And they do a great job. They do a great job. So then they remember what I had last time. I can make my own list. I can do stuff. Everything's great. I can have the list that when my sons come to visit, then I order one set of things. When it's just my husband and me, then we do these kinds of things. It's really great. It's hard for me to want to go somewhere else because that's a level of convenience and assuredness that I can't really find elsewhere. And the list could go on and on and on from there about the quality of the food and whether or not it's healthful and whether or not it's what I'm looking for and whether or not I'm going to make points with people because I impress them and they think I'm a great cook, even though they might know me too well to know that. So we have to remember this. The customer strategy is building the value of the company by building the value of the customer base. It matters less what product we're selling. I know that's a radical statement because we spend so much time worrying about those products. And in our case, they're essential products, and some of them will go bad soon. But we still have to think of ourselves as being in the customer business because that's how we increase the value of the company. Things are not always what they seem. What color, is it A or B? Is that square over there in the white? Is it A or B? Can you tell? Well, it's hard to tell because the background changes the way things look. So that means we have to ask ourselves when we start thinking about how good our own customer experience is. If we're sitting there saying, well, you know, my customers have a really good experience. You know, there was a study that was done by Bain & Company that said that 80% of corporate executives said that their company delivered a superior customer experience. And then they asked the customers what they thought. The answer was a little different. In fact, 8% of the consumers reported they received a superior customer experience from those same companies. Things are not always what they seem. Because we're living now in a world of rising customer expectations. When we look at how different companies handle different things, you know, we understand that even in completely different product categories where we don't even think of ourselves as having competitors, the way our customers, B2B and B2C, are being serviced over there affects what they expect from us. And if that's the case, then we have to change the way we do stuff. Things aren't always what they seem. The customer's view of trustability comes from their total experience with the world. So it's not enough if our view of trustability means that we're thinking about how we've improved things since the last time we were doing stuff, this time a year ago maybe. We have to make sure that we're really doing it the way our customers are thinking about it. So when we look at these companies that are more and more trustable, I'll tell you something, Royal Bank of Canada, they have a way of evaluating the success of their managers by looking at the value of the customer base. So at the end of the quarter, we evaluate ourselves on how much the bank has made this quarter from customers, but we also look at whether or not the total value of of the projected 3-year value of that customer base has gone up or down, and how much. So there's a forced balance of the long term and the short term. And they do this by looking at things that help to save money in the long run. So for example, one of the things that they determined was that they were, you know, kind of losing money by selling products instead of being customer oriented. Let me give you a perfect example. Do we have anybody here from Canada? Yeah, so is it fair to say if you're Canadian, you're frugal? Is that fair? Okay, so if you're Canadian, you're frugal. And if you're a customer of Royal Bank of Canada, and you're a good customer, and you usually do things really well, and they slap on an overdraft fee maybe for your checking account, you know what you're going to do? Correct me if I'm wrong. You're going to call the bank and get it taken off. Am I right? Of course you are. So what that means is that the bank has to pay an accountant to put the fee on. Then they have to pay somebody in the call center to take your call, and you're now irate, so you feel less good about the bank. Then they have to pay an accountant to take the fee off, because of course they agree to do it. And so the bank ends up not making any money, not getting a fee, instead of, you know, instead of, you know, not costing them any money, not getting a fee. So by cleaning up things like that and tailoring who does and doesn't have to actually pay the fee and who's going to get it taken off anyway, and we'll remind you, you know, we should have charged you this, but we didn't because you're such a good customer, we love you. So, you know, by doing stuff like that, they've actually had a 13% increase in profit per client. And in that same period over the last 5 years, they've had an increase of 20% profit per customer in the highest value customers. But how did it redefine the reward system for the person who's in charge of the checking account product? Think differently about the bank, product-oriented, customer-oriented. So when we think about trustability, it's really the kind of thing that can trust-proof our business. It protects us from random swings of social sentiment. You know, JetBlue was one of those airlines that had a bad day, they had bad weather, everybody's stuck on the planes, everybody's, you know, texting about it and tweeting about it and sending videos to CNN. And so they apologized for it, they got in everything, and they did a real apology. We're sorry, won't happen again, this is what we're doing to fix it. And then that's all they could do. What else can you do? That's it, that's all they can do. And yet everybody's still complaining, JetBlue. And so what ended up happening was that their own best customers, their true blue, most frequent flyers, those are the ones who got on every medium, old media, new media, and said, okay, they had a bad day. Come on, they're still better than Delta. And as a result, we want to make sure that you come back and give them a chance because they're really a good airline. Wow, you can't buy that. You can only earn it day after day after day. Here's what social networks really require of us: that we be everywhere, that we be omnichannel, and also that we build and maintain day after day after day a reputation for trustworthiness. That's what people are talking about when they talk about us. A culture of customer trust drives a lot of the leading firms, and I'll tell you something. These companies are not just selling products. They are deliberately building the value of the customer base. That's the business they're in. So here are the 5 steps that I want you to think about as we really get started going to that new higher level of trustability. Step 1, acknowledge that customers not only create value and cost for us today, but they also today make us more or less likely to be successful forever, and build that into our strategic planning. Second, make sure that all of our products and services are terrific, that everything's clean, that it's great, that we have beautiful stuff, that everybody's polite, that we do a good job. Because only when we do that can we be counted as competent in that part of the equation. We also have to make sure that we are continuously improving our IT systems, maintain up-to-date data, that we're really good at business intelligence capability, and as a part of that, that we really are listening in, that we're participating in the discussion in a fair way that helps our customers, because we're not just there on the social networking with them to make sure that it helps us, we're there partly to help them. And we do that interconnectivity in a way that works. And also, I hope that all of you, if you haven't done it already, will very soon hold a fire drill in your own company for what we do if sometime between Friday afternoon and Monday morning things go haywire on social networking, because many companies have been caught completely blindsided and didn't know about it until somebody sent a note to the CEO or the marketing person or something on Sunday afternoon. And finally, we want to make sure that everybody in our company feels a real stewardship for customers. No matter what department you're in, we don't make money. We can't pay anybody. We can't improve stuff. We can't do anything unless customers pay us money. And that makes us all responsible for what they do. So that means we've got to engage our employees. We've got to give them the very best tools they can have to enable them. And we have to really build, on purpose, a corporate culture that's based on real trustability, on do things right, do the right thing, and do them proactively. So I want to leave you with a little inspiration from Harley Davidson. I'll tell you something, this is such a great company, a favorite of mine, because way back in 1993, when our first book came out, it was called The One-to-One Future. Back then, we were predicting that technology was going to have a profound change, require a profound change on the way businesses do business, and that it was going to be a switch from just thinking about mass marketing to thinking about one-to-one and customer relationships and managing those relationships and experiences. And back then, in 1993, when the book first came out, I'll tell you something. It came out in 93, and the phrase World Wide Web was not in that book. You know why? Because there wasn't one yet. Less than 20 years ago, there wasn't a World Wide Web yet. That's how fast things have changed. Now, by the way, we did revise the book in 1997, so you can get a revised version, and people still use it, I'm happy to say. But at any rate, what was interesting is way back then in 1993, that's when we got a call from Harley-Davidson. They were at the height of their game. They had solved all their quality problems from the 70s. They hadn't yet run into some of the problems with some of the international stuff that they ran into later. They were absolutely at the height of their powers. You had to wait 8 months if you were an executive at Harley to get a motorcycle because they were in such big demand. There were such terrific products and such huge demand for that brand. And it was at that moment that they decided to make the investment in becoming the best relationship builders they could with their dealers and with their consumers. So at that moment, they decided to go ahead and do it. And I think it sort of paid off for them because they have a group that they call their 2%ers. Those are the people who ride Harleys all the time. They look like it. You know, they're like this guy. You know, they're like riding billboards out there. They look like Harley users, right? And I kind of like this, and I'm putting this picture up here because I think that it really does give us a new key performance indicator. I mean, look at this guy. He's a customer, and he has tattooed the logo of Harley-Davidson right onto his body. Now, I just want to ask you, how many companies in this room have customers who have tattooed your logo onto their bodies? And maybe that should be our goal. I'm just saying, maybe that should be our key performance indicator for next year. It's something to think about when we start looking at this sort of thing. Well, that's it from me. We're really a company that thinks a lot about this sort of stuff. I'm thrilled to be here with Retalix today. We're all the time looking for how our clients can build these stronger relationships and build these stronger customer strategies. So it's really a delight to see the kinds of tools that Retalix is developing that makes it possible to take that strategy into execution and make it really work. I'd love to hear from you. We stay busy on this stuff all the time. I used to be an interesting person, but now this is pretty much all I think about. And so I'd love to hear your stories and your questions. Please get hold of me if there's anything that we can answer or do for you. If you have a great story or a bad story that you'd like to tell me, I'd love to hear from it. Have a terrific conference. Make customers happy. Make them be more trustworthy and even always more and more trustable to them. And we'll have a better world to live in. So thank you very much. I'll keep eating, and so will everybody else. Thank you.